There's not many things in life that I shut the F up about.
That's 100% true.
Welcome to Fringe Element here on the 440 Sports Network. My name is Braden Gall, and you can follow me on Twitter at Braden Gall.
What's your real name?
Douglas?
I knew it was something weird. Your first name's Douglas?
No, that's my middle name. My first name's Braden. I'm not really sure what the question was about. Welcome to the show.
I'm Erin Dugan. You can follow me on Twitter at the Erin Dugan or Instagram Erin_Dugan.
We have a lot of SEC football to discuss today. You've known me for how many years? 15 years?
Oh, shit. Have I really?
No, maybe not. Like 12
no,
years?
hold on. I'll tell you. 2011.
Okay, 11 years. More than a decade you've known me. You have thought my name was something different this whole time?
I just, when you said it that last time, I just, didn't believe it this time. When you said it, I was like, I feel like you're hiding something.
One time. It's like watching Georgia play Missouri. You just don't believe what you're seeing.
Yeah, it is a lot like the fourth quarter of that game, actually.
Or the first three, where you're like, what is happening?
Well, all right, just really hit at the end, and you're like, is this really happening?
Yes, exactly. No, my real name's Braden. You can get to me on Twitter at Braden Gall. No problems there. It's exactly what my first name is. Nobody's ever been able to pronounce it. I've been Brandon everywhere I've ever been. Work.
And I call you Brad when you're annoying.
Well, so all the time.
Yeah,
basically,
just call you Brad.
You do call me Brad, basically, which is fine. Brad sounds like a more annoying person, I feel like, than Braden. So that tracks. That tracks.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff to get to today on the show. Brody Miller, who is on the same lax team with Brad. There's no question about that. No, we love Brody. Brody Miller from The Athletic, covering LSU and Tennessee. He will be on the show a little bit later on to give us a breakdown of that matchup. Jaden Daniels should be healthy, ready to go. 11 a.m. kick time. Not a lot of time to cook the food and drink the beer, but LSU and Tennessee at 11 o'clock Central Standard God's time. We'll talk to Brody Miller from The Athletic coming up a little bit later on in the show to discuss that game. We have a lot to get to, man. The state of Mississippi with a really big weekend. Now they've got another big weekend, especially for Mississippi State, as they will host Arkansas. We've got what do we make of Ole Miss? How good are they? How good is Kentucky after that game down in Oxford? Tremendous stuff there. Auburn, what are they waiting for? They'll play Georgia this weekend. We already touched on what's happening with LSU. We'll get into that. Of course, Jimbo Fisher and A&M are going to play Alabama this week. It's a little bit more interesting because Bryce Young's injury status is up in the air, but it's also sort of a little anticlimactic considering how Texas A&M season has gone. So we've got a lot of stuff to get to from week 5 and looking ahead to week 6. Brody Miller going to join us as well. However, before we do any of that, Erin Dugan, Fringe Element, is brought to you by
J Dunn. It's the happiest place in the world. It's a lot like Disney World. It's a little bit different. But their people are happy. Employees, everybody. You don't seem like you like where I'm going with this.
No, this is my favorite part of working with you. Doesn't matter what our sponsor is. I have no idea where the ad's going to go. And it is my favorite part of working with you. J Dunn. Go work at J Dunn if you're looking to make a career change. Top 100 happiest place in the United States to work. And she's not wrong. She's telling you the truth. That it's, what did you say, happier than Disney World? Is that what you said?
No, Disney, I think Disney's logo is like the happiest place on earth. I was trying to make that a thing with J Dunn.
Okay, so maybe
happiest place to work on earth.
I think I heard Stetson Bennett walking off the field. Somebody asked, like, what are you going to do next? He's like, I'm going to go to J Dunn. Like, I think that's what he said after the win.
That is what he said. Yeah, a lot of people didn't hear that, but he did say that.
Although he probably will end up working at a place like J Dunn when he's done because he's not going to play in the NFL. And he's super smart, great teammate, hard worker. That's what J Dunn's looking for. That's what they want. It doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter what your experience level is. Like, they build huge buildings and big hospitals and all kinds of big construction projects, but they're not trying to sell you a $250 million building. They're trying to get you to help them build the building. So
also a really good sign if they're just really looking for people to work there because they're, just continuing to kill it and making $5 billion in annual revenue and just smoking everybody. So
including meats on their grills on the patio overlooking downtown Nashville. No, honestly, truly one of the voted best place to work, top 100 healthiest place to work in America. Honestly, if you want to work for a company that cares as much about you as you do about you, go work at J Dunn. That's basically it. If you want to play for Josh Heupel and Sam Pittman, go work at J Dunn. That's it.
Yeah.
JDunn.com. Now accepting career resumes and applications.
Yeah, if my career goes awry, I will be doing that.
Well, you're working with me, so I don't know how much more evidence you need.
I'm doing a lot more than that.
So, all right, let's get into Alabama. So Alabama, Bryce Young gets the AC joint. I don't know why he's trying to throw on the last second there as he's getting tackled. They had a 14-0 lead. It eventually goes up to 21. Arkansas makes a furious comeback. It's 28-23. Starting to see cracks and Bryce Young dependency. And then, of course, Alabama does Alabama things with Jalen Milroe, the backup quarterback, who brings a totally different dimension. Not totally different, but certainly a more explosive runner. And they just drop the hammer in the fourth quarter. They cover the 17.5-point spread on the road with their backup quarterback. And we'll get to Georgia's struggles in a little bit, Aaron. But I think we've got to start with how impressive it is that Alabama was able to do what they did with their backup against what I still think is a pretty good Arkansas team.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely did start to see kind of where Arkansas was falling apart, and a lot of that had to do with just Arkansas's inability to really convert on third down. They just could not make that happen. It was hard for their pass rush to struggle. Just a lot of things just kind of falling apart for Arkansas right in front of your eyes, but they did make it interesting there for a little bit. Alabama just had some big time, chunky plays, even on third down. I think 5 of their plays, I wrote this down. They had gains of 47, 53, 22, 12, and 77. So 5 of their plays when facing first down made up for 40% of their offense. And Arkansas just really struggled to get things done when it mattered on third down. And it kind of ended up, it definitely allowed Alabama to cover the spread. Even if Arkansas had been playing their best game on their best day, I do think that Alabama probably would have eked out the win, but it could have even been more interesting than it was there for a second.
Yeah, and I think Jahmyr Gibbs, I mean, I would guess, I suppose, the best sort of all-around game from him. Obviously, over 200 yards rushing, caught a couple of passes, wasn't really used in the return game there, but over 11 yards per play. That's the Jahmyr Gibbs I think people expected. And I think when Bryce Young goes out, there's this panic that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then everyone realizes, wait a second, we're Alabama. And then other 5-star future NFL players go, okay, I got this.
Right.
And then they go on to win. And
Alabama has built national championship level teams around quarterbacks that were far less talented than Bryce Young.
Yeah, and Milroe, the backup.
Yes.
Jacob, I'll remind you of Jacob Coker winning a national championship.
Yeah.
And Greg McElroy winning a national championship and all that kind of stuff.
We were thinking it. You said it.
There you go. So obviously what it leads us to is the matchup with A&M this weekend, which, I don't know about you. We loved it when the whole Jimbo Nick Saban thing happened. It was fantastic. It was catnip. But I also thought it decided the outcome of the game. And I thought, this isn't going to be that interesting of a game. And game day for ESPN is going to be in Kansas, of all places now. They're not interested. A&M's now lost twice. They got destroyed by Mississippi State, could not pressure the quarterback. They're good on defense, but got roasted by Will Rogers in Mississippi State last week. But the injury to Bryce Young is certainly a huge issue here. We're not exactly sure what it's going to look like on the field. Are you more interested, less interested? Explain the evolution of interest in the A&M, Texas A&M game for you, Erin.
To me, just what Texas A&M is not necessarily what I thought they were going to be this year. So I just think that there being a little bit more a division between the Texas A&M team that I thought we would be seeing in this one makes it slightly less interesting. I try never to get excited about a quarterback. I'm not excited for why. It is more interesting.
Right, yeah. You don't have to explain to people that you don't root for injuries.
I don't root for injuries. I'm not a big injury rooter. But
do you want to try that one again?
Nope, I think I'm good on that.
Okay,
I'll double down. I feel less interested, but I don't know if I can totally put my finger on why.
I mean, I was not interested at all.
You are more interested now? I don't know.
I'm far more interested now because the chances that the quarterback, okay, look, it's not.
I get why. I know that that's the popular answer. I don't know why. I just don't totally care. But finish your thought.
Well, but because I think you're still right eventually. Like I can talk myself into, all right, backup quarterback, Texas A&M defensive line. Okay, they're pretty good. Like you can start to justify it in your head while you're starting to get more interested. But this is
kind of know.
Right. Like I almost don't care who starts or plays. I feel like A&M is going to get hammered by Alabama. I don't think it matters. I think again we're talking about a team that could be 3-3 versus the number one team in America, basically. Now that Georgia, of course, looks totally mortal. So it's just hard. Like I'm trying to talk myself into getting more interested in the game, if that makes sense.
No, I know what you're doing. I agree with you, and maybe I didn't say this in a very succinct way when I was trying to a second ago.
Because you're an injury rooter.
Yeah, I'm an injury rooter.
Big injury rooter.
If Texas A&M had been what I was expecting and hoping for them to be, this would make it super interesting. But they've just, because of all the things you just named, it's going to be probably what it still was going to be. So I'm just not going to get my hopes up about it being super exciting because I don't like to be disappointed.
Yeah, and I was checking. I'm scrolling right now, looking for the updated point spread total on the game, because I'm like you. I'm kind of the same way, and Vegas totally agrees. It's right now currently at time of taping. It's a 24-point spread for Alabama. So I looked at some numbers over the course of for the first four meetings of Fisher versus Saban, A&M, and Alabama.
Okay.
45 Alabama's averaged 45 points a game in 3 wins and 1 loss, 509 yards per game, 7.7 yards per play. Texas A&M has averaged 29 points a game, so 2 touchdowns less, 401 yards, more than 100 yards less per game, and 5.7 yards per play, which is 2 full yards less per play than Alabama, which is, again, the difference between the best in America and one of the worst offenses in America, if you're not familiar with yards per play. So I think we've already talked about it too much. Like I'm trying to get into it. I'm trying to sell myself on it, but I don't know. It feels like that alcoholic taking a drink. Like, you shouldn't do it. So I don't want to get too excited about it.
Yeah, I don't have a lot else, but we can talk about, are we going to roll back into what happened this last weekend?
Well, I just think a lot of what happened, LSU was able to get pressure on Will Rogers in Mississippi State, and it led to Mississippi State not finishing drives, LSU closing them out in the fourth quarter and winning the game. A&M could not get any pressure on Will Rogers. And if you cannot get pressure on Will Rogers and he stands back there and he's got some receivers that actually have some space after the catch to make things happen, and the defense is allowed time to operate, although Texas A&M is not exactly challenging anybody on offense right now. It's just an incredibly impressive win by Mississippi State. And, of course, they're going to host Arkansas this weekend, who, I don't know about you, but, like, I still think Arkansas, again, like I said earlier, I think Arkansas is a pretty good football team. Like, I think unlucky, and then Bama, and, like, most teams are 0-2 in that situation.
What did you just say about LSU?
That they got pressure on Will Rogers?
Oh, I thought you said something else.
What did you think I said?
Nothing.
Well, explain.
No, I don't have to.
It's a podcast.
No, I get it. I know what it is.
Did you think I said something offensive?
No, I just I thought you had something backwards for a second, but now that you repeated it, I don't think you did.
No.
I wasn't going to totally call you out.
You can always call me. I mean, when have you ever not called me out for anything?
I don't know. I'm just feeling really nice today. It's weird, honestly.
Okay. We'll see about that. We'll see where the show goes.
Mm-hmm.
No, Arkansas, Mississippi State. Arkansas, despite losing to Bama and Bama covering the spread, there's some issues in the secondary that Mississippi State can probably exploit this weekend. Mississippi State's an 8-point favorite. But I still think I think this is going to be a very high-scoring game. I think Arkansas can score with Mississippi State. I still think I think it goes back to people are counting Arkansas out altogether already because you lose unlucky to A&M and then Bama beats you. But I think that would be stupid to overlook Arkansas and just forget all about them.
I agree, because I actually think Arkansas operates better from that underdog mentality. Like, Arkansas doesn't need you to think they're good if they know that they're good, and I know that they did not have the showing that they wanted to this last week, but they'll operate fine from that place. The humility factor seems to work in their favor. It is interesting to see because they depended pretty heavily through the couple weeks stretch they had at the beginning of the year, and I know I'm going to use like South Carolina and forget the other team they played.
I mean, they beat Cincinnati pretty well.
Yeah. I just mean, but it was Missouri State, so it wasn't like anything super impressive, but they really depended pretty heavily on getting to the quarterback when they're on defense.
Yeah.
And so they were leading college football with sacks like entering into this past week. They had like 14 in a 2-week stretch earlier in the season, and then they've had 3 total in their last 2 losses. So I just think that says something about like what is their defense able to do, and how is Mississippi State going to protect the quarterback? And there's a lot of factors that lead into it, but I think they depended pretty heavily on like being able to put pressure on teams earlier in the season, and just to figure out how to do that against these these higher ranked, more talented teams in the SEC. If they can translate that, it's going to help them a lot.
Yeah, I think pressuring Missouri State and South Carolina and Cincinnati is different than pressuring A&M and
it's way
and
different.
Alabama. Now, even saying that about A&M, you kind of feel weird, like saying that out loud, like, oh, A&M, because they're starting to prove us all.
Yeah, but just size-wise, if nothing else,
which
makes
matters.
it harder. Yeah, it does matter.
Size does matter. There's no question. Arkansas's won the last 2 in this matchup. The last 2 have been 1-score games. Mississippi State was dominant before that. Dan Mullen had kind of owned this rivalry. A lot of that was coaching turnover at Arkansas. But so historically, it's tough to kind of see because it's, 2 guys in their relatively early in their careers in the SEC. I just think it's going to be a really fun game. Lots of points. 8-point spread seems a little high for a Mississippi State team that still always kind of does some things to keep the game close, despite what happened last week against A&M. I like Mississippi State to win the game at home, but I would not be surprised if Arkansas has the ball driving late in like a, I don't know, like 44-38 type of game. Like I could see Mississippi State's 3-3-5 struggling to stop the versatility of the running game for Arkansas. KJ Jefferson doing some stuff, slinging it around a little bit. No pressure for either team on the quarterback. Like I just think both quarterbacks are going to have some room to cook.
I agree. I think for me, I think it's going to come down to turnovers. I say whoever can take care of the ball. That's what that definitely made the difference with Mississippi State and Texas A&M this last week, with the Bulldogs forcing 4 turnovers over the course of the game. And if you cannot protect the ball, if all other things are even, and I do think this is going to be a great matchup, it'll be high scoring, like you said, and it'll be a really fun game to watch. But with a defense like Mississippi State that can create chaos, you just have to be that much more detail oriented and making sure that on offense you're protecting the football. I think it's going to be really close, and I think turnovers will decide the game. I think whoever has more turnovers will be the loser at the end of the week.
Which is a pretty good number to go with. I also think like Mississippi State last week against A&M, it was just one of those moments where they finally looked like the whole complete team that we expected. Like special teams was good, made big plays. Defense was good, made big plays. Offense was not just good, but balanced and was able to make plays after the catch. Like it was just a very holistic, well-played game by Mississippi State. So play A&M. That's how you get healthy these days in college football. And good luck on that 24-point spread against Bama this week. State of Mississippi, though, not just the Bull Puppies, Erin. Although very impressive win by the Bull Puppies. Old Mississippi, now 5-0. I don't. Am I in apology territory yet? Like, do I have to apologize to Ole Miss yet? Or do I need, like, am I already there, or have I already done it?
Have you already apologized?
I mean, I kind of like, it was like a backhanded apology last week, maybe. Last week, I kind of backhanded apologized, but it was sort of like
you
saying.
mean subtly backed off of your incorrect analysis of what would happen this season?
No, I have not.
Subtly admitted you were wrong just a little?
I have no problem admitting that I'm wrong. I'm wrong all the time. I said Ole Miss has a chance to be 6-0 or 7-0. This is what I said all summer, but that they're going to lose every game down the stretch. I am starting to feel very different about that. But it's also just one game. And while the defense for Ole Miss was impressive, that was what was impressive. That's what I didn't expect to see, was a defense flying around, or all of Chris Partridge's gut hanging out of his shirt while celebrating a win. I don't know if you saw that.
I did.
If you're gonna, so you did see it? Oh my God. If you're gonna be in the booth and you're gonna jump up and down to celebrate, just have a shirt tucked in, or one that's long enough to cover all of your stomach. That part was hard to watch.
They didn't give a shit.
Defense was good. Defense was fun to watch.
It was.
Not Chris Partridge.
That also came down. I mean, obvious. I figured that game was going to be close. And Did you think at the beginning of the season, did you think Kentucky Ole Miss would be as close as it was? Did we think that there was more of a separation? I'm thinking in the preseason, I thought there was a decent amount more separation between what Kentucky was going to be able to do and what Ole Miss could pull off.
That's a good question. I think in the Athlon magazine, I think we had Kentucky at like 26 and Ole Miss at like 30. So I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I think they were pretty close. Only the second matchup ever where they were both ranked. And so maybe Ole Miss defensively is further along. Their running game is really good. That's the other thing I thought was impressive, the way they were running the football in Kentucky, because you don't do that to Kentucky. They had almost 200 yards rushing against Kentucky. But again, here's the other side of this. Like, all of that's good stuff for Ole Miss, but the other side of it is the fumble by Will Levis going in to score to win the game probably could have been targeting. So you might have gotten lucky there if you're Ole Miss to get that ball. Yep. Then they go down to the 1 yard line and throw a game-winning touchdown pass that's called back because the receiver is half a second from being set, which again is a mistake by Kentucky that Ole Miss capitalized on. But you could also be like, both those plays probably could have gone the other way, and you lose the game if you're Ole Miss.
Right.
Then we're raving about Kentucky. So it's not like they dominated. So it's a great win, and things are impressive. But I think we also need to kind of just say, all right, good job. That was basically two very even teams. And maybe that's kind of the point of your question, maybe?
Yeah, I think that is the point of my question, which is I'm not making serious season-long assumptions about either of these teams based on this game, because I do think it could have easily tipped the other way. I mean, you can tell by the score that it was not, I mean, it's obviously close, but it doesn't really change my opinion about Kentucky, except for there's some little mistakes that you just can't be making. And at this point in the season, you have to be cleaning up those little things, trying to get to the root of what is putting people in the position to turn the ball over and all of that. But overarching opinion about it is that I feel kind of the same about Ole Miss and Kentucky as I did going into this week. So I just can't make any major assumptions based on the result of this game.
I tend to agree, because I think Will Levis probably held the ball too long, but the offensive line didn't help him much at all. So I think I kind of saw out of Kentucky what I expected. I think there were some things about Ole Miss that I didn't expect. Again, the defense and the running game in particular, those are two areas, if I'm an Ole Miss fan, I'm very pleased with.
Yeah, with what you can do against Kentucky on the ground is obviously saying something.
How about this?
Okay.
If what you're saying is true, and I tend to agree with you, but if that's true, that like we didn't really learn anything, they're both pretty good, right? Like good teams, top 15 teams in the country, give or take a few spots, however you want to rank them. If they handle their business this weekend, if Ole Miss goes on the road to Vanderbilt and just does what we think a top 10 team should do, and Kentucky hosts South Carolina and does what we think a good top 25 Kentucky team should do, is that where we just go, yeah, that's everything we thought they were back 2 weeks ago? Does that sentiment make sense?
I think so. I think it does make sense.
Like, if either one of them struggles, then we kind of know, well, maybe what we saw last week wasn't all that great. Does that make, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it does. And I would go maybe a step further and say, I mean, really, these two teams should not be struggling against Vanderbilt or South Carolina, respectively. So if you're struggling, it's a really bad sign. But just, can you use this game like they had, especially for Kentucky, like making some pretty significant mistakes, or at least ones that, I mean, again, some of it could have gone the other way, like you said.
Right.
But can you use
still turnovers?
Still turnovers. If you can use these games to not only not struggle, because you should not be struggling against either of these teams, but can you use it to clean up the places where you need work? Because when you play, you kind of get to go back to the drawing board after these big, pretty close, even matchups. And if you play a team the next week that can give you the opportunity to actually figure out what's going on and fix it, like, you should not be making, basically, don't be turning the ball over to Vanderbilt or South Carolina, and there should be plenty of room and a talent difference to be able to clean up what your game is.
Yeah, Kentucky a 10.5-point favorite right now. Ole Miss an 18-point favorite. So double digits, not huge spreads for Kentucky in particular.
Really not that big.
No, they've won 7 out of 8 against South Carolina. They won 4 in a row at home. The last 2 have been kind of blowouts. So I think if Kentucky covers a 10.5-point spread, then saying that they're basically even with Ole Miss and that game was basically an even game on the road with a good team, sure. Do I like Chris Rodriguez being back is a big help for them. That helps their rushing attack. The one question I have for Ole Miss is, like, do you trust Jackson Dart to carry a team to, like, let's say Kentucky had scored a touchdown in one of those two possessions and took the lead, and they're up by 4, and Ole Miss gets the ball with 1:20 to go. Plenty of time for Lane Kiffin's offense, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were running that RPO play action 8-yard in route the entire game. And at one point, I'm like screaming at my television. My wife is sitting next to me, and I'm like, honey, they're about to run an RPO play action 8-yard in route on 3rd and 7 for the 11th time. And it's going to work because Kentucky hasn't figured it out. I think finally they sort of figured it out. Do you trust right now against a good team like a Kentucky or an Arkansas, Mississippi State, Tennessee, pick a team? Do you trust Jackson Dart with 1:20 to go to lead the team to victory? That's I think the last thing that I don't know about maybe with Ole Miss. I don't know.
I don't think I can go that far. No.
Not yet.
I don't. He's super talented. Don't get it twisted. I just don't know if everything else is rock solid enough to say, because obviously, there's a bunch of moving pieces, but I'm not ready to say that, especially against, and it's not necessarily because of a lack of trust with him, but it's more all the other teams you just named. You named Tennessee. If it was any other year, I'd say, yeah, they're fine. Or you named Mississippi State. Like, it's more about the competition that I don't think he can get it done against, rather than like him himself being inherently flawed.
I think that's fair. I would have loved to have seen, and not because I'm rooting against Ole Miss. I had Kentucky plus the 7, so I won my money either way. But I would have liked to have seen, because they have not been challenged. He has not been challenged. They have dominated 4 inferior opponents until that game, and they were basically held in check in the second half. The running game is what was good. The defense is what was good. I would have loved to have seen him put into a situation where the game was on his shoulders against a very good Kentucky defense, but at home, I don't know. I think we would have learned even more about Ole Miss.
It would have been more telling.
Yeah. But still, I mean, super fun football game. Like, love that game, even if it was a little sloppy. So,
yep.
All right, we still have LSU Tennessee with Brody Miller coming up. We're going to talk about Auburn, what the hell they're waiting for. They'll play Georgia this weekend. Again, LSU Tennessee, a game I cannot wait for. What exactly is going wrong with the Georgia Bulldogs, or what went wrong against Missouri? How concerned are we? The weirdness of the Missouri-Florida game. So there's a lot of stuff still to go on the show. However, I've got a question for you before we do any of that, because Fringe Element is brought to you by
J Dunn. You're gonna make me do the taglines too.
Just
okay,
put one out there. Yeah, whatever you're feeling.
J Dunn. They don't even need a tagline. This is one of the nicest. Braden, I am waiting on my official J Dunn invite to tour the office, but Braden has not shut the F up about it and how nice they are. So feeling a little left out, and I'm ready to tour it. So Braden, tell the good people why they would not be mad to show up there every day.
To be fair, there's not many things in life that I shut the F up about.
That's 100% true.
Here's what I was going to ask you, because the offices are spectacular. Top 100 healthiest place to work. They care about their employees, so you should go check them out. JDunn.com. I'm gonna rattle off all the head coaches in the SEC, and you need to tell you're in charge of J Dunn. You need to tell me what role you're putting him in, because you don't need any experience to go work at J Dunn.
Okay.
But I want to know, like, here's an easy one for you. Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri. He applies for a job. He's going to J Dunn. Like, to me, that is an engineer. That's a guy who could build buildings and design things. Like, he's a super nerd. I'm putting Mike Leach and Eli Drinkwitz into the engineering department at J Dunn.
Yeah, like the mad scientist room.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or I could put Mike Leach into legal. I think he's got a law degree from Pepperdine, I think.
I wouldn't do that.
No.
I mean, I know he's smart, but like,
Did you see him give wedding advice to Alyssa Lang after the game?
Yes.
They're like trying to go to break, and he wouldn't shut up about Trevor, who is Alyssa's fiance.
I also
he's like elope. It's gonna piss off all the women in your family. Just elope.
I love Alyssa Lang. Like, I'm a huge fan, and her and Mike Leach together. I mean, he's up there interview wise for me with, I mean, no one's Steve Spurrier, but Mike Leach is pretty entertaining.
I will say, Alyssa, I had a couple beers with her at Media Days. She is even more fun in real life than what she's even allowed to be like on camera. Like,
I love her.
She's great. All right, what Josh Heupel? What role? You're in charge of J Dunn. Where's Josh Heupel in J Dunn's organizational flow chart.
I feel like he could be like in HR, but not in a boring way. Just like trying to get people hyped up for like day-to-day shit.
So
You
did
know?
you say HR? Is that what you said?
Yeah, but I don't mean that in like a boring way. I mean that in a way where you can get people pumped about.
So he's the head of like the organizational psychology, doing Enneagram tests and like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he's like, how am I going to make you love it here, even though it, it doesn't suck there. So I'm sure it was easier than coming into Knoxville in the condition he came into it. But
Jimbo Fisher,
God,
head of sales. Is he the head of sales?
I was gonna say like a salesman that like just drinks a lot and you would not want to take to a student. I'm not saying he does, but he just kind of reminds me of, the person that, you know what I mean.
It's the end. It's like major companies have these like retreats for all their best salespeople.
Yeah.
Like Jimbo Fisher's the organizer and implementator. Like he's the head of sales management. Implementator. Jesus. He's the guy who like goes on he like books the hunting lodge resort for all the best salespeople on the staff to go celebrate how good they were at selling things. I think. Okay.
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
Nick Saban, CEO, obviously.
Yeah, duh.
Kirby Smart is what is he, head of accounting with the haircut?
He could be that, but he could also be like business development, like the VP of business development.
Ooh, okay.
Like keep it moving forward, but
all right.
You don't have to. He's not as loud as the sales guys.
Lane Kiffin.
He doesn't work there.
So, only one you're just like, nope. J Dunn will take everybody, but not him.
I just think it'd be pushing it. I really do.
He doesn't even work in the analogy. It doesn't even work in the analogy.
No, he got a bar job downtown and is loving it.
Who else? Mark Stoops, Billy Napier. I mean, Brian Harsin obviously is not there, so
he also does not work there.
We'll get to that in a second.
Nor anywhere. You didn't ask me about Sam Pittman.
Sam Pittman. What's Sam Pittman doing at J Dunn?
I think he's like he's like the morale leader. Do they have that there?
I think that's under Josh Heupel's department.
Okay, I could see that though. They can work together.
It sounds like. All right, this has gone too far.
Yeah, it has.
Go to JDunn, jdunn.com. They'll find a place for you, even if you're a former SEC football coach, which brings us to Brian Harsin and what he's going to have to deal with this weekend as a 30-point underdog against the Georgia Bulldogs. So what exactly happened against Missouri? What are we concerned about with Georgia? And then we'll get to Auburn in just a sec. So I don't know when you caught the score of the Georgia game. I had a family gathering with my wife's family, and we were kind of sitting around, but we're all big SEC guys and fans and people. So we were kind of like keeping an eye on, and all of a sudden we look up and it's like 10-0. Wait a second. So then we actually put it on pretty early.
Yeah.
And then I never really felt like Missouri was going to win the game, which is probably unfair. We'll get to their game against
fair, but
I know their game against Florida this week could be the most bizarre rivalry that no one talks about in college football, by the way. But I just, Georgia got stops, held them to field goals. First thing about Missouri, if they just kick a 12-yard field goal against Auburn and just get one stop on defense against Georgia, we are having a very different conversation about Eli Drinkowitz and the Missouri Tigers, right?
Big time.
Like a win over Auburn and a win over Georgia? Are you kidding me?
And Auburn means less this year than in many years prior, but a win against Georgia right now, if you're anybody, is big.
It makes you the not worst Tigers in the SEC.
It does make you that.
And there's three of them, not just two. There's three.
There's three of them. I was at, I had a huge party here for friends. Like we did like a blowout baby shower on Saturday for two of my friends who, MC and Ricky. And then we went to Tin Roof after, and we're all sitting there eating in our like formal attire, eating chicken tenders and watching this game on like a pretty small TV. And we're all just around it in formal wear. Like, what is happening right now?
You guys wore formal wear to a baby shower?
We're extra.
I know you're extra. We went to a baby shower 2 weeks ago. I brought my 5-year-old, not sure I was allowed to. And I think we were wearing like fishing shirts.
I just wanted people to not want, I hosted, I had help.
Well, okay. Yeah, you're putting on a show. I just wanted people
to not like really, everyone's excited for their kids their friends when they are having a child, but sometimes baby showers suck. So I was like, let's not have a shitty baby shower. So we had a cocktail party from 4 to 7 on a Saturday with the game on. And dressed up and drank, and then we went to Tin Roof.
Well, and we're sort of we're like slightly older than you, so like we've already gone, like all of our kids now are between the age of like 2 and 8 in all of our friend group, so we've already done all the like we don't really have a whole lot of more baby, like we're kind of done with the baby. You know how you age out of wedding season, like we've sort of aged out now of baby shower season. So that sounds like a fun one though. I'm just, at what point did you think Georgia was going to win? And then the more important question is, what is it that Missouri did that is on tape now for everyone else to use to stop Georgia? Because clearly Georgia is beatable. That is the big takeaway from that game, is that you can beat Georgia. They're not this unstoppable behemoth number one in the nation like they were last year.
Well, if you look at just the way that they were coached, and obviously Missouri's defense had a lot to do with what they were able like to pull off here to keep it close, is just, being able to, I mean, first of all, Georgia was they were 3 for 11 on third downs, which is just not going to do it. The drive chart for their first 8 drives were punt, fumble, field goal, field goal, field goal, which there's 60 million field goals in this game.
That's a lot of stops.
Yeah. So they turned the ball over a couple of times. They were having to settle for field goals right and left. They were just completely out of sync offensively, it seemed like. And Blake Baker just with Missouri just almost felt like he took all the right chances when he needed to.
I think that's a good way of putting it, actually.
He trusted his guys to get it done when he, kind of figured out where they were going to go and how they were going to do it. And it did come back and haunt them a few times, but you can't play Georgia without taking risks if you're Missouri. Yep. If you want to cover the spread, maybe you can, but you definitely are not going to you're definitely not going to have people gathered around a small TV in formal attire at Tin Roof in the fourth quarter if you don't take risks like they did. So I don't know exactly about. I'll let you answer.
No, I think you did it. Like, they were aggressive on defense, going after Stetson Bennett and the offensive line. It was one of the worst games the Georgia offensive line is going to play all season, so they're not going to be that bad again.
They won't.
But they just stunts and twists and going after him in the middle and the blitzes and just being aggressive. And to your point, that is risky over time. It works in short doses, but they didn't really have any other option, so they had to keep doing it. And as soon as Georgia figured out, like, all right, we're not going to be able to run off tackle, throw the short passes to the tight ends, and let Stetson Bennett run around a little bit, they realized they had to change. So then they started going down the field, and then all of a sudden it started to work, and it opened up, and then the running game started working again. And then all of a sudden, like, if you're going to be that risky for 60 minutes, you better have real good dudes, and you better get some breaks. And I think the game plan is sound.
Yeah, I do too.
Being risky and being aggressive on defense is how you approach them. But
their defense set the tone. I mean, they set the tempo for the whole game. Like, we're used to seeing Missouri's offense try and a lot of the time fail to be able to set the tempo of a game, and the defense comes in and tries to do what they can to keep it close. But it was completely flipped on its head. Like, the defense set the tempo for the whole game, and I mean, I was very underwhelmed about what Georgia was able to do, but very impressed by Missouri at the same time. And I mean, if you can even, they're on to something. If you can do that, doesn't matter what day you play Georgia. If you can play Georgia this year, even though I did not have a good game on Saturday. If you can play them this close this year with the amount of talent they have and what they were able to do last year and their experience, you're on to something. So keep it up.
Eli needed one of those wins the last 2 weeks so badly, just to talk to his fan base in the offseason. Like, he needed one of those to go his way. And you kind of like, you're just like, oh, that sucks. And now they're playing Florida, which, by the way, is not a super interesting game, but an 11-point spread. It's one of the most interesting rivalries in all of football that no one talks about. Remember, these two coaches, Dan Mullen and Eli Drinkwitz, almost got in a fight like 2 years ago. You had the Darth Vader costume, the Jedi Knight costume.
So weird.
After getting Dan Mullen fired. One time, Missouri won in Florida by scoring 42 points and had like 7 first downs and like 110 yards of offense. Like, this has been one of the weirdest series. Not many people around the country are going to watch Missouri, Florida, but it is. I guarantee you something bizarre and surreal is going to happen this weekend with those two. I don't know what. I can't wait to watch it.
Those are the best kind of games. I definitely think that I think it's going to be a good game. I would be more likely to tune in and watch Missouri this week against Florida than I normally am. Sorry, I don't mean that in a mean way, but
what about this? Missouri, Florida, you can watch all of it, or you can watch all of Georgia, Auburn, a 30-point spread right now, in which Auburn should and hopefully will fire Brian Harsin.
I'm watching 0 of Auburn, Georgia in that game, or Georgia, Auburn in that game. I'm watching the whole Florida, Missouri matchup.
And I say that, by the way, not to be like, I hate you, Brian Harsin, I want you fired. Like, that's not at all what I mean. I just, like, let's end this charade. Like, let's put him out of his misery. Let him go get another job. Give him some of that buyout money. The bye week is coming. It is clear that they've been waiting to get destroyed by Georgia, because Auburn, after a 17-0 lead on LSU, which is going to lead us into the Tennessee game here, they don't score a single point in the second half. They take a 17-0 lead and they give it all back to LSU and lose the game at home. Like, it's over. It's over. What are we doing? Auburn fans, I've talked to a few people down there. They are done with this. I don't understand what they're waiting for.
It's time for him to open his CrossFit gym. We've seen enough. Thank you.
So he has a CrossFit gym inside J Dunn's facility. Like, he's a contract laborer.
Yeah.
He might just,
yeah, he's just like the team trainer.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it was sloppy. It was undisciplined. It was busted assignments left and right by Auburn. It was a train wreck. I mean, and
yeah, it's bad.
Yeah. And also, I mean, it never falls on one person's shoulders, but Robbie Ashford's ain't it.
Well, and God, 350 yards passing, like, insane. Which is going to be interesting because, again, LSU pressured Will Rogers in Mississippi State, which you didn't believe that I said earlier on the pod, but I did.
Yeah, you did.
LSU pressured Robbie Ashford. He was able to get out and run around, and that's going to be what LSU is going to do to Tennessee this weekend. We'll get to Brody Miller in just a second, who's going to talk about that, how well that defense has played. They've given up 7 points in the fourth quarter all season against FBS opponents, LSU has. So that defense is legit. Here's to wrap up the Georgia conversation, Erin, what do you want to see from Georgia in this game against Auburn, a team that is on life support?
It's hard to put your that's a good question.
Because we just saw them struggle. They're now beatable. They're no longer number 1 in the nation. All this stuff, right? We're going to overreact. They're favored by 30 points against Auburn in one of the best rivalries in college football. It's not even supposed to be a game.
It's just, to me, it's more about the mental agility of Georgia, of being able to pivot and be like, that's not us. That was just a weird week. It's a middle of the season. We had an off week. That's not us. We're going to either just reset and get right back to where we know we are and where other people think we are. It's just not believing that narrative about yourself and knowing that it was just a one-off. To me, it's the mental. I mean, there's a lot of actual things that they could do, and we could talk about how they need to clean up their game and what they have to be able to do offensively and all of that. But to me, it's just not believing the narrative that you are going to play Missouri close and that's who you are. It's being like, oh, we're Georgia and we're getting back to it and we've cleaned it all up and we're moving forward, and we're lucky we won because it didn't affect our record at the end of all of this, but we're not that. Stetson Bennett still finished over 300 yards passing, led 2 game-winning touchdown drives just like he did against Alabama. So it's like, as soon as you start doubting Georgia. Now, here's what I would say. If they struggle again in this game, it is close, even within 10 points. I think then you have a pattern, because Kent State wasn't exactly an easy win for them. It was easy-ish, but it was a 17-point win. They gave up like 4 or 5 scoring drives on defense to Kent State, which albeit is a good offense. Then they struggle mightily at Missouri. If you then come back and struggle against an Auburn team with a coach who's supposed to be done, I don't know. Then you have a pattern here, right? Yeah.
Like 3 games makes a pattern for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Agreed.
There we go, Georgia. Handle your business. You're beatable. Alabama's beatable. It's great that it's good for the game that these are beatable teams, and they all have good games coming up for both of them. I still think after all of that, they're still the best 2 teams in the conference and will be in the playoff. So I'm not really changing my prognostication about either team. Although
such interesting weeks, and it doesn't matter. Thank you, Braden. What an inspiring TED Talk.
I just got a text message saying that somebody thinks
exciting for you.
Somebody thinks Bryce Young is going to play. So I think that's likely. But just again, we kind of mentioned it earlier. The question is, how good is he? How strong is the arm? How strong is the shoulder? We shall see. But it does make the A&M Alabama game interesting if he doesn't play. But it does sound like he's going to play. Real quickly here. Go ahead.
No. I said K.
Before we get to Brody Miller, I just want your thoughts real quickly on LSU and Tennessee, 11 a.m. kickoff. Really the most important thing here, because this is a huge game for Tennessee to prove that they belong in the top 10 as an undefeated team. Brody's going to talk a lot about LSU. Hendon Hooker's got a Heisman Trophy on the line here. There's a lot of fun stuff. These are just two teams that need to play more often, and I can't wait for the new schedule because LSU and Tennessee should not. 2010 is the last time these two played in Baton Rouge. That is ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, these are two of the more fashionate. That was passionate and fans all in one.
Oh, fashionate?
Word.
I like that.
Yeah, you didn't know about it because it didn't exist until right now. The most passionate.
Also well-dressed
bases,
as well? Fashionate? I don't know.
Could be.
Yeah.
It was an accident. Let's not make it
I
into
like
more
it, though.
than it is.
It's a good accent.
Fassionate pan bases, both of these programs.
pan bases.
Yeah, I see what I did there.
I like it. I like it.
It will be LSU's trying to get back to where they think that they should be existing in this conference, and Tennessee is too, but it's been a lot longer since they were here in this position than LSU. I think it makes it extremely interesting, especially with just how fast-paced Tennessee plays as an offense, and then just their, the talent they have at the receiving position. I just think that the matchup is going to be extremely interesting, very fun to watch. And I don't know what the spread is. Actually, let me guess. Do you know it?
Yeah, I do. Go ahead and guess.
I feel like I could be really off here because I don't really look at the lines that often.
Gambling is not the same thing as college football.
Is it within 7?
Two different sports.
3.5.
Tennessee by 3.
Oh, okay. I was close.
There you go. You didn't say LSU or Tennessee. I'm assuming you were saying Tennessee.
I was. So, I think I have more faith in what Tennessee is than LSU, just because I know more.
So I think there's one key to the game. It's kind of based on what you just said. It's also going to be based on what Brody Miller's about to say. So I'm going to let you guys listen to that. We come back, we'll wrap up this bad boy. But when we come back right here, Brody Miller, the Athletic, covering LSU, talking LSU and Tennessee right here on Fringe Element. Brody, good to see you, man. How are you? Welcome to the show, my friend.
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me as always.
So how pissed off were LSU people that this was an 11 a.m. Central Time kickoff against Tennessee?
Genuinely angry on so many levels, right? One, like, they just want to tailgate, right? They want, I've seen people be like, well, you just wake up early and have a beer. And I'm like, I don't think you get it. They're waking up early and having a beer liquor for the 7 p.m. game. They're mad that they only get 5 hours for the 11 a.m. game. So they're mad about that. They're mad that the environment for like what should be a really big top 25 game is going to be, you never know. Like 11 a.m. games usually are a little muted. And 3, I think there's also frustration from LSU people, like administration and stuff, about how this is going to affect recruiting and be able to get some people in town, all that stuff. So like there's genuine anger for this game, which is kind of wild.
Well, do people in charge at the SEC office not understand how long it takes to make a good roux? Like it takes a long time and a lot of stirring to make a good gumbo, and they need time for that. I'm honestly surprised, Brody, that they have not put in a state law that says every LSU home game, like through the legislative office, says every LSU home game has to start at 6 p.m. or later. Like I wouldn't be surprised.
Honestly, I bet they'd love that, but Papa SEC might have their own say. Yeah.
Well, except for the main 2:30 kickoff.
I like that. Would be a fun little compromise. Yeah, I know. It is always funny how mad they get, because it's like you do kind of get what you want like 90% of the time. Right. Like, come on. But
and I'll be very clear, speaking to LSU fans who are listening to this. Tennessee, this is not like we're joking here, having a fun time. Tennessee fans were like, consider this a victory. Like they consider having to play at 11 a.m. in Baton Rouge at Tiger Stadium with an LSU team that has been playing well since the first weekend of the regular season, although take away the first quarter against Auburn, I guess.
Take the first quarter of every game away.
Yeah, really. I guess that's true. Well, we're going to get to that. But Tennessee fans are genuinely like happy and excited that this is happening at 11 a.m. So we're joking about it, but I think it does have an impact on the atmosphere. So
I mean, let's put it this way. It's the first like real top 25, like LSU has hope, real major home game. And this is not an exaggeration, in 3 years since 2019, because basically opening day of 2020 and 2021, like the season was just off the rails right away.
Yeah. Good old Bo Pelini's man coverage against KJ Costello. But you're right though. Let's talk about that, because this is certainly the Florida State thing happened. The fourth quarter happened. We'll get to sort of how different this team is on both sides of the ball. It feels like in the third and fourth quarter, but you have some momentum. You have an undefeated Tennessee team that has not been in this situation in a very long time, but they are riding high with a quarterback who's playing extremely well. Can you kind of give us, like, is it nervous? Is it cautious optimism? Is it pure joy and excitement? How are the LSU fans right now at this point of the season following the first 5 games?
Yeah, I think the honest answer, and it's going to sound rare, but is generally pretty rational of understanding that this was always going to be Ed Ogeron left this program in a tough situation, and I think most people genuinely operating like this is a 10-year hire. You know, it's the hire that's going to, you know, Kelly's guy is going to hopefully get you on track for year 2 and 3, but this year's team is going to be competitive but not dominant. I think most people understand that. So I say that to say I think most very much view this season in a weekly progression kind of way and not like a if we don't win 10 games there's trouble way. So yeah, I think the Florida State game was really concerning by just how ugly it looked and just the penalties and the special teams and the errors that had people concerned. But in terms of where they're at, I don't think anyone's like this team's great. I think everyone views this team as a flawed team that has some talent, that's showing some real toughness to figure things out, but they'll never be shocked if they lose this game by 20, you know. So I think that's where most are at.
I want to start on defense because I think Brian Kelly, his staff, sort of a proven track record of being pretty good on defense. 0 points in the second half against Auburn, 0 points the whole game against New Mexico, 0 points in the fourth quarter against Mississippi State, 3 total in the second half. They gave up 17 to Florida State, but only 7. So they've given up basically 1 touchdown to Power 5 opponents in the fourth quarter. What worked against Mississippi State? Is any of that applicable to Tennessee? And what is it about this team defensively that seems to work in the second half?
Yeah, I think I start with Matt House was just a really good defensive coordinator hire. I mean, you look at the last 2 years, it just hasn't some I wouldn't blame Geronte Jones for all of it, but at the same time, like this defense just has been so talented, but not gap sound, all those things for a few years now. And, you know, you look at that Mississippi State game and Matt House just had a really, really impressive game plan, man. It wasn't just like drop 8. It was constant confusion. Where's the pressure coming from? Overloads when they don't expect it. You know, they never knew if it was going to be 8 or 6 in coverage. And I give him a lot of credit for that. And then, you know, I think at the end of the day, this D line has been a strength. I mean, that's what it was supposed to be. But even without Mason Smith for the season, this, you know, Mekhi Wingo stepping in has been an you know, a really good defensive tackle. And that D-line, Bijo Jalari, who, again, like fell in that category of that you've seen so much these last 2 years of really good talent, guys who were going to get drafted, but it never felt like they were like really the complete players they were supposed to be. Right. You're seeing those guys become those players, where Bijo Jalari now looks like a top 15 guy. Like he is a star so far this season. So I think that's where it starts. But I give a lot of credit, and they've been really creative with how to use like Harold Perkins, the 5-star freshman, you know, not giving him the whole catalog, but saying, hey, here's where we're going to use you, use your athleticism, and he's just making plays. But the credit I give is most like this secondary was supposed to be a major problem. And I think one, credit to the personnel, man. They've been better than I thought they'd be. And 2, you know, I think they've just done a good job of scheming around it. And those safeties are playing great. So they don't get beat on the deep end. Or when they do, it's just because of more like they were chasing the running quarterback like Robbie Ashford and then they got beat in coverage. You know, it's not, you don't see them just flat out get beat by a passer, which all leads to your question. Hendon Hooker is different than the quarterbacks they played. Hendon Hooker's the real deal, man. I gave him my first place vote in our Heisman straw poll this week. Like I am all in on him. And if you chase, you know, if the DB comes down when he's scrambling, he is going to pick you apart. He is just such a commanding passer who knows how to read the field. So it's going to be a different challenge for them. And as much as Mississippi State's a good offense, but like they haven't played an offense quite like this that's this multi-dimensional. So it's going to be a fascinating battle.
Yeah, the X's and O's part of this on how you go about approaching Josh Heupel's offense is interesting because it's not necessarily complicated. Hendon Hooker makes it really difficult to stop because he's got like Jordan Travis-like accuracy down the field, but he's got Robbie Ashford sort of mobility. And again, I don't think anybody expected 350 yards from Robbie Ashford ever. Like that's not a thing that should happen. And I know we talked a couple of months ago and you said corner, that's a concern. That's what I'm concerned about is the secondary. Do you just expect something similar to the Mississippi State game plan, which like you've already talked about, which is just overload, disguise, change it up, confuse, because Tennessee, again, with the super wide splits with the wide receivers, and they do want to run the ball. Is it come down to one-on-one matchups on the offensive line? Like, where is the thing, or is it Tennessee's receivers against the corners? Where's the thing that decides how well LSU's defense plays?
Yeah, it's such a good question because it's like, I don't know if you do the same thing as Mississippi State, but you probably really, as much as I give these corners credit, they haven't really been beaten one-on-ones. That's also scheme, right? Like they have kind of avoided getting themselves in those like legit one-on-ones where you're like, hey, Mekhi Garner, go stop Cedric Tillman, And I think that's going to be the thing. You probably do want to stay in that zone. You do want to stay in, taking pressure off those guys. And they have these safeties that are so rangy and like multiple, where Greg Brooks and Jay Ward are basically both nickels and safety hybrids that are just floating around. So I think it's a relatively similar gameplay. Maybe not as like sit back conservative, but I think a relatively similar thing where you want to be disguising all the time and creating havoc, because if Hendon Hooker gets to just hang out, he wins that battle 9 times out of 10.
So let's go to the other side, and we'll talk Jaden Daniels. And I know you had mentioned, again, when we talked about 2 months ago in the preseason, kind of leading up to the season, there was still some chatter about Garrett Nussmeier in the background. I find it difficult to grade Jaden Daniels because I still don't think really I don't think he operates, and again, you're closer to it than I am, but it doesn't feel like he operates within the confines of the offense. But then when push comes to shove in the fourth quarter, when you sort of need someone to make plays, he's done well. Tennessee's played 2 very different quarterbacks in Keaton Slovis, who they just abused because he stood back there, and Anthony Richardson, who's over 500 yards of offense, but wasn't particularly great. And so even with all that production. So I'm curious, A, how you grade Jaden Daniels, and then what is the right way to approach him if you are just trying to stop the legs from working in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, I think first off, I think you probably, if you're a defense, I think to some extent you let him run, because it's like you'd rather, because he can't run every play. He's just not going to. So it's like you'd rather let him pass and see if he makes mistakes. But yeah, it's been, like you said, it's hard to grade. It's been impossible to grade because it's like in the first, it looked like it was tempo. Okay, when they go tempo, he thrives. And, hey, if you go the short, quick passing game, he thrives. But it's not that simple. A lot of that's game plan. Like against Mississippi State and New Mexico, we're dropping back. Yeah, that worked because you can get short passes, let your really good receivers go make plays. Auburn didn't let you do that. And all of a sudden, Jaden Daniels just really couldn't make a decision. He couldn't, decide. He was 8 of 20 and for 85, I think he had 85 yards total or something less than that. Yeah, he couldn't really recognize. And Brian Kelly had a fascinating press conference yesterday where he just flat out said, you need to be more aggressive. Like there is a line, but guess what? It is okay if you throw a few interceptions, because probably what you are what LSU is losing right now by never taking those chances is greater than what it would lose by, say, greater than what it's gaining by no interceptions this year, which credit to him. He's no interceptions. But I mean, I just had a piece go up today that like even he's only thrown 18 passes, 15 yards downfield this whole season. And that's for
it's 2022, and this is not a Mike Leach offense. What are we talking about?
And he's 6 of 18 in those, which like that's concerning. So maybe that's why. Yeah. But this even being 6 of 18, first off, that just shows you how few. But 2, even 6 of 18, he's still he's 9.8 yards per attempt, and on the shorter passes, it's like 6.5. So even though it's not pretty, it's still more effective, which I guess, in again, small sample size, but that proves Brian Kelly's point. So yes, you do need him to be more aggressive, and it's hard because it's like, I don't know. Yeah, maybe his second half numbers are better because you're trailing so much and teams are playing more conservative. Also, Auburn's not a bad defense, as flawed as they are. I don't think, Mississippi State is not actually a really good defense. So I don't know. And this game will tell us a lot in a small way, just because Tennessee it's not a bad defense, but they give up a lot of explosiveness in the passing game. That you can say. Yeah. So I think this is can he take advantage of that? Because if he can't, it might just be what it is.
So Alabama and Georgia are the best 2 teams in each division, and that's sort of what we thought coming in. And I can't, there's not really any change despite their recent struggles. But I think we sort of have talked all season and preseason and all summer and all spring that 3 through 10 in this league is pretty balanced, pretty even. A lot of really good teams, good quarterback play across the board. Now that we've seen Arkansas, unluckily, I guess if that's a word, lose to A&M. They sort of challenge Alabama, but not really. Mississippi State loses to LSU, but then comes back and abuses A&M. A&M is what it is. Jimbo needs to go on a vision quest into the into the great wilderness of West Texas and find some high school offense to evolve to. Ole Miss, I'm not sure exactly how great they are. That's a nice win,
but hard to figure out.
But it was pretty lucky. Where now that we're almost halfway, with LSU in mind, where are they in the pecking order, and how has your pecking order changed sort of relative to the entire conference?
Yeah, I think I said on this same show this summer, but I think I was basically like, I think it's going to be like a four-way. Four teams are going to be 8-4 in the West. I believe that, and that's not an insult. That's me thinking. I think there's five teams that are probably six teams that are probably the top 25 in the country. Like, if we're being honest with ourselves, and I think that's where it is. Where guess what? Arkansas is probably going to lose 5 games, and I think they are legitimately good. Like they outplayed by almost any metric by Texas A&M, and Bama's just a terrible matchup. And by the way, they're probably going to lose this week too because Mississippi State's a bad matchup. But like, Arkansas is really good. They'll probably do really well against LSU. And Mississippi State, I love them, and I think gun to my head, I consider them the second best team in the West.
I do too.
And I'm not confident, but yeah, like I think they're the most well-rounded. LSU just really defended well that game, but they're not bad. Ole Miss, I was so down on, and they proved so much to me defensively and proved that this run game is just good enough to like actually go up against the Kentucky and run it. Like, that is an elite run game, but Jackson Dart just is what he is. He's not going to beat you. And LSU is probably, to answer your actual question, I think I put them, I think I go Mississippi State 2 in the West. Yeah, you got to say Ole Miss 3 right now. Yeah, I think LSU's probably tied with Arkansas like in that 4 or 5 spot, and they still probably go 8-4 in my opinion. I think that defense will keep you in almost every game. Jaden Daniels, as much as like we are constantly criticizing his flaws, is still net very effective. Like, it's so much about why you're not better, but he is still effective. He is still good. His running game is so elite. So it's like, yeah, I think LSU's going to win some football games, but they're not like a team I would put in the top 10. So I put them in that 4 or 5 spot. And
just ironically, as usual, not mentioning A&M at this point of the season already.
Oh my good. Yeah, and I think A&M.
No, and you're right. You're right. Like,
I think A&M. Wow, it's crazy to say they're 6th, right? I don't know if I believe that.
I don't necessarily disagree.
If I'm really asking myself, I think they might be, but I think the difference between 6 and 2 is so marginal.
Right. And are they better than Tennessee, Kentucky, and Florida? Maybe Florida, but maybe not Tennessee and Kentucky.
No.
So we're again 3 through 10 in this conference are. It's hard to figure out who's better. How concerned are you with either Alabama or Georgia, or no concerns at all?
I think the way I put it on our show, on David Ubbins and I's show, Football and Grits, that it's like, because David's like full throttle, like Bama's just not that good. They're going to lose 2 games this year, and I'm like, I get it, but. No, do I think Bama's a juggernaut that I thought they were before the year? They were just the absolute juggernaut? No. And do I think Georgia's the juggernaut they looked like 3 weeks ago? No. But guess what? I think 1 through 3 in the country this year with Ohio State are clearly the 3 best teams. And just because no one, like, we have this screwed up brain where it's like, we judge teams by you should be the greatest thing ever every week. And it's like, all right, but like, we're still judging it by everyone else. Like, teams, it's college football. They're college kids. They're not perfect. Like, I think Bama and Georgia are still 2 of the 3 best teams in the country, and there is a drop off from 3 to 4. They are still probably going to, one of them will probably win the national title. They're just not freaks. So I'm not worried about them. Bama gets better as years go on. And that's the one team that genuinely has earned that trust. And I'm not going to judge Georgia, a defending champion that doesn't have the same like push, by how they do against Kent State and Missouri. I mean, you got to win it, but I'm going to judge them by how they play against Tennessee. Like, it's just a different calculus when you're a defending champ. So yeah, man, I still trust both those teams.
There's some concerns, and they're not as elite as we thought.
They're not perfect,
but man, they're still pretty damn good. So
pretty damn good.
All right,
who do I trust in a fourth quarter? Bryce Young, man.
Exactly. What or the backup for Alabama? I'm going to put you on the spot here, and I want to say, if we have this conversation again after Thanksgiving, heading into the SEC championship game, what is the headline about the LSU football season?
Ooh, good question. I like that. I think it is basically that Brian Kelly has probably put this team in a more stable place. They are a team that can handle tough football games in a way they haven't been able to. And the roster will, by the next year, the year after that, be like in a more well-rounded place. So it's like, I think by the end of this year, Kelly got through a rocky but more stable season where you win 7 or 8 games, you're competitive, and like, I know that's not a headline, that is some multiple paragraphs, but yeah, I think they are finally on stable footing entering year 2.
It's all right. I'll remind everyone listening that writers don't write their own headlines. That's a different part of the company. the different part of the company for every company. We could have a longer conversation about whether or not that's the right thing to do or not.
Yes.
LSU stabilized, still has work to do. There you go.
Yeah, I think you did it for me. Thank you, man. Different part of the company. Yeah.
There you go. Brody, thank you so much, man. Enjoy the weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm telling you, Tennessee-LSU is one of my favorite games of the entire year. Thank God we're going to a new scheduling model. We actually get to see this one more often, and
absolutely,
we don't have to just look at internet clips of 2010. So thank you so much, man. Good talking to you. Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks as always, man. Take care.
That was Brody Miller. And here's my one from The Athletic. Go check him out. Football and Grits podcast, talking SEC, all kinds of great stuff. Covers LSU. Really good dude. All right, Aaron, you said earlier about Tennessee sort of handling the pressure of the situation. They haven't been here before. LSU's got a new coach. They haven't had, as Brody said, they haven't had a big game like this in Baton Rouge since 2019. So it's interesting to me mentally which team is mature enough to handle how big all of this is going to feel for both sides, because LSU is sort of rising since week one, and Tennessee is clearly in way over their heads from an expectation standpoint. I think Hendon Hooker's the difference. I think Tennessee wins, and I think Hendon Hooker handles it all. But don't be surprised if he's running around for his life and that there are some mistakes by Tennessee, because this is all about how they handle themselves, both sides in this situation. Way more pressure on Tennessee right now.
I agree. I think that I believe that if I had to pick, I'd say Tennessee will pull it off, and it's not necessarily because of anything really for me outside of Hendon Hooker, like you said, and also LSU just still trying to find their footing on offense and just being able to play as aggressively as they need to. Just been like a little bit more conservative. So I think if they can kind of bust out, that it'll be a little bit closer. It's if all other things are equal, it's Tennessee just having a little bit more experience, an extra year with their head coach, and then also just the way that they're banding together as a team. I know that that's a little bit less X's and O's and is a little bit more out there, but just the experience they have playing with each other, the way that they, know each other, and just LSU, it still feels like, as it often does, a lot of talented pieces that aren't completely meshed together yet. I think Tennessee has it a little bit more locked up, and so that's why I think that they'll end up winning this weekend.
Hendon Hooker's in complete control, but he's going to be under pressure, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to run the ball, so it's going to fall on his shoulders to take care of it all. I think Tennessee wins, but it is way, way closer and tougher than people think. LSU is going to come out of there looking good and feeling good, even though they're going to be 4-2. I like Tennessee. Aaron, where can people find you? Go to jdunn.com if you want a real change in your life and your career, and you want to work for somebody who cares about you. Go to jdunn.com and check them out. You do not need any experience. They will find a place for you because they want good people that care about the business and themselves and their careers, and they want to care about you too. So check them out, jdunn.com. Where can everybody find you besides at a very fancy baby shower?
The Aaron Dugan on Twitter and Aaron_Dugan on Instagram.
There you have it. You can get to me at Braden Gall as well. Check out the YouTube page. Check out our Picks Against the Spread every Friday with Steven Lasson. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. jedunn.com, everybody. Enjoy week 6. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Friday. This has been Fringe Element here on the 440 Sports Network.
Peace.